Hey everyone, it's me, the Big Cheese. That sounded better in my head. I guess you're not going to subscribe now? Please do. I'm playing Nioh for the first time with no prior knowledge of the game aside from the name. I want to give you my initial impressions of the game as a first-time player. So, let's begin. First off, this game is stupid dark. Not in terms of content, in terms of the screen. It's just actually way too dark. My friend and I are both playing it side by side, hoping to play together at certain parts, and he and I both had to put the brightness settings up because we couldn't see anything. Suffice to say, there is a lot to like in this game, but a lot of the challenge comes from the fact that there is so much going on. Not necessarily in a bad way, but for example, there's a lot of weapons and moves and abilities, and it actually can be a bit overwhelming at first. I went through some trial and error through the first area of the game for hours and hours before I finally got the hang of the combat a bit, and even then, it was difficult. And I'll be honest, I was ready to give up almost when I first started, but like other Souls-type games before it, I pushed onward and I hope I would get better and learn more about how to play. And I think I am because I'm about 6 to 7 hours in and I think I'm doing much better, or at least I'm able to kill a few more enemies before I get my shit rocked. And I did. I still am trying to figure out the timing for recharging your stamina. After every attack, you have a brief period of time to recharge your stamina by pressing R1, and I'm really trying to get the hang of it because I find the visual cue just very unclear. And like I said, there's a lot going on, especially when you have multiple enemies around, so I feel like I was doing more running and dodging when my stamina was low instead of making an active effort to recharge it as I was attacking. If I look at the stamina bar itself when this happens, it seems a bit easier to see, but I still struggle with the timing right now. It could also be that I'm a punk bitch and scared to die. I am. Big Cheese is afraid of his own shadow. Is it starting to catch on? I can feel you unsubscribing. Please stay. Also, this may feed into my punk bitch status, but why is there a prologue that doesn't tell you how to play the game, and then a tutorial that tells you how to play the game after you've already started kind of teaching yourself how to play? It just seems odd. It does clarify some things later as you play, which makes it okay, but then I realized after that, well, actually, the game is just trickling information to you as you go to not overwhelm you with how to play. I mean, you can look up these tutorials again at any time, so I suppose the only person to blame for my confusion is just myself. I played around with some of the skills and leveling up, but as I said, I have no idea what I'm doing yet because, again, this game is doing a lot of things, and I'm learning. Knowledge is power. I really like the guardian spirits that give you access to so-called living weapons. It's like a F all of you, I'm gonna obliterate everything in my path type of ability that can give you an edge in combat. And it definitely does. Saved my ass a few times. I also felt that tinge of anxiety of accumulating a lot of Amrita, or Nioh's version of souls, and then losing all of them because I'm apparently a dumbass who doesn't get how to use it when he's got it. I have nightmares about the time I had about 2 million echoes saved up in Bloodborne and then died again before I could get back to them. Why would I do this to myself, you ask? I'm stupid. I don't know. I like living on the edge and having to grind for hours again and again and again to get experience back. There is a bit of a learning curve, but I suspect that's normal. I think it's got the DNA of a Souls game, but with enough of its twists to the combat and abilities to feel like its own game. It also has its own kind of like missions structure to go through the story, which I was not expecting. Instead of just traveling through a seamless world like a Dark Souls game, you're selecting missions to move through. It doesn't feel forced though, it actually gives you time to sell and equip gear, train in the dojo, maybe customize your character a bit, or level up. Again, there's a lot to go through, and it's cool. I picked the dual swords and axe for my primary and secondary weapons, so my character prioritizes speed more so than toughness. I do like in an RPG when you can build a character to specific skill sets and not just make them good at everything. It makes your skill choices much more worthwhile and meaningful. You can even play with a buddy, which makes it even more fun to play. It's a tad easier, so you'll both just decimate those yokai demons, but the bosses still messed us up. This game is still tough, but it's never not fun to play. Except it did take me like 15 tries to beat the first boss. F that guy. Also kind of cool, you can fight the bodies of revenants or dead players. It adds some social element to the game, but also allows you to get some cool equipment early on, or weapons. Before I forget, speaking of equipment, this game contains transmogging. Why don't more RPGs include this? It's incredibly underrated in my opinion. If you don't know, transmogging is just changing your gear to look like other gear so you can keep the stats of what you're wearing, but have the look of a better looking set. Or so you can equip based on stats and not looks, because you can just change them to match. Again, like, why is this not in every RPG game? Come on, guys, get with it! So as a first-time player, those are my initial impressions of the game. Again, I only played about 6 to 7 hours, give or take, so I suspect I'll play more of it and have different opinions as I go throughout the game, but I did start to enjoy it. The game is only a few years old and still looks pretty good, but considering how gorgeous some games have looked from this past year, it doesn't necessarily hold up perfectly, but visuals are the least important thing about this experience in general. Also, I don't really understand the story right now. Really, there's been some cutscenes and a floating cat or two, but otherwise I don't know what's happening so far. Such is life, I suppose. Anyway, we'll talk more about this game as I continue playing it, but in the meantime, thanks for watching. And if you liked the video, consider hitting that old subscribe button. It needs a friend. Perhaps that friend should be you. Above all, remember this. I love you. Maybe.